Uh, on behalf of IAP East Delhi, I welcome all the esteemed faculty members, all faculty and guests for today's discussion. It's a very important discussion for today. Roadmap to school reopening. It has almost been well over 2 years now. The children are away from school. It's very disheartening to see our growing kids away from school, impeding their growth and studies, and leading to overall development getting impaired. We all want a speedy reopening of our schools. For this to discuss, we have learned panelists today, Dr. Samir Dalwai, and he's a developmental, he's Joint Secretary IAP and Central IAP and developmental pediatrician from Mumbai. Dr. Swati Ghate, ma'am, she is a senior pediatrician and developmental pediatrician from Jaipur. Dr. Deepak Gautam, he's president Delhi IAP. Dr. JP Kapoor, he's former director, Department of Family Welfare, Government of Delhi. And Miss Mrs. Astha Mahajan, and she is counselor, DPS Mathura Road. Annie Koshi, principal, St. Mary School, Safdarjung Enclave, Delhi. And besides, we have guests today to put their point for Miss Priyanka Dev and Miss Rinki Tanti and Neha Kumari, Akshat Singla, and another other kids are also joining, Dr. Ajay?
Yeah, some more may be joining
Sure.
by 3 o'clock.
Sure. So, I request Dr. Ajay Kumar Gupta, President IAP East Delhi, to welcome all the guests, all the faculty members, and welcome all the guests, please.
Thank you, Dr. On behalf of IAP East Delhi branch and IAP Delhi, I welcome all the esteemed faculty and the office bearers and parents and students also, and school principals and various stakeholders. Actually, IAP came out with guidelines what to do in April 2020 by Dr. Swati Ghate. What should be done and what should be the ideal time to reopen. In between, there was some dip in the number of cases, but again, with the onset of Omicron wave, the things got pushed away again. But now the things again seems to be settling down, and it is a belief that now we'll have to learn to live with it, because to wait for the vaccinated, it'll be a big wait. One vaccine may not be sufficient, and all the kids, it may take a very long time. And this pandemic and remaining away from the schools is taking a big toll, not only on the children, but also on the parents, as well as on the school authorities also, and everyone involved. And for this, we have arranged this formal discussion, and we'll try to follow it with the health minister also. And before we begin, we request Dr. Sangeeta Yadav, who is the former senior vice president at Central IAP, to say a few words.
Very good afternoon and welcome. And thank you, Dr. Ajay, for the kind invite. And it is indeed an honor and my privilege to be amongst all of you for this wonderful program, which is being flagged off from the Central IAP. Hats off to our Central IAP members, office bearers, who have felt the need and taken it in a bigger way. And along with our learned faculty, Dr. Swati Ghate, Samir Dalwai, and others, and the faculty members who are quite passionate about it. I see Manpreet, who has been going in a big way. In fact, she wanted a petition to be signed to take this forward for reopening of the schools. And Dr. Jaipal Kapoor is there, another very seasoned pediatrician from Delhi who has been addressing the children and adolescent needs. We have been working together for quite some time, especially in the Delhi state ever since. And I see a galaxy of our stalwarts, and I congratulate Ajay, Puneet, and Deepak Gautam, and our Pankaj Garg, the East Delhi branch as well as this IAP Delhi State branch to take this important issue and have a discussion with all the stakeholders over here. So I wish success for this program, and I'll be eagerly waiting to listen to all of you, and all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. We have guests joining from different parts of the country also. Dr. Pawan Kalyan from Andhra Pradesh is there. Dr. AVS Ravi from Haryana is there. And now I request Dr. Deepak Gautam to please say a few words.
Thank you, Dr. Ajay, and good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Sangeeta ma'am. Good afternoon, Dr. Swati Ghate. Hello, Tarun. Namaskar, Dr. Kapoor, and everybody, because it is difficult to name all of you, and you are so, all the stalwarts and eminent people in this field, and we'll discuss whatever we can. And it is a good topic suggested by Dr. Ajay Gupta. And I also request Dr. Sangeeta ma'am to comment in between what she feels, because she is the most experienced person I am seeing here. And very good, Dr. Ajay Gupta, and all the best for this this discussion. And I feel it will be some result, some fruit will come out after this decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Deepak. I request Ms. Annie Koshi, Principal, St. Mary's School, Safdarjung, Enclave, how she is feeling about whole thing, about the last 2 years experience, and what should be the way ahead.
Well, as a principal, and it's been a terrible 2 years. And as all of you are very concerned, the most important thing I usually tell my staff is that a teacher is only as good as her presence. And definitely the interaction of a teacher and a student is only as good as when it happens. And to think that this online is the interaction that is happening and is the excuse for what we call education is the laugh of the century, actually. And it is such a tragedy that education comes at the bottom of the list of priorities. You know, liquor shops are far above us. And then everyone seems to be concerned about the children, and so they are kept at home. And so it just shows such a lack of understanding, a lack of love for our kids. You know, I say that if parents will not fight the battle for their children, who's going to fight the battle for these children is the question that needs to be answered. And I'm sure we'll have some answers as we go along. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now we have Ms. Asta Mahajan, who is a counselor, student counselor from DPS Mathura Road. I request her to please share her experience for the last 2 years, whether she is getting any phone calls from parents or from students, and what is the experience of the teachers also.
Thank you for this opportunity, Dr. Ajay and the team. I think this is a very significant webinar that you have initiated, and there must be a discussion for road ahead, because I think both the educators and the learners have faced so many challenges with the whole transformation from offline to online, then hybrid, then again online. You know, I think we are all learning. We are all learners now, not anymore teachers. We are learners with new technology. But at the same time, I believe what is positive is that everyone is started giving more importance to health, and health has become prime, and that is also generating empathy amongst teachers and learners. If we don't empathize, if students don't empathize with teachers, they will not really understand what they are teaching. If teachers don't empathize with students who are facing challenges at their own end with technology and all sorts of other factors, with parents being around all the time at home. As a counselor, I feel a lot of students tell me, ma'am, how do we share our problem? My mama is standing behind me. My papa is listening. My papa is doing work from home. He's right there. if I have to share something personal also, I don't think I'll be able to. That has been my experience as a counselor. So so that poor kids, they've lost their personal space, I think, in this online learning mode. At the same time, the good thing is parents are realizing that how much school means. It's not just teaching of subjects, but how much school means while they see children taking these online classes at home. So it has been a learning experience for all, I think, parents, children, teachers as well. And we are hoping to transit back to the offline mode with a positive mindset, with your very significant tips that I'm looking forward to a lot of experts present here today, how we can move ahead in a positive way by our learnings from these challenges, and by taking the steps discussed here today.
Thank you, ma'am. We have students also. I request Master Akshat Singla to say a few words. Akshat, would you like to say something?
Yes, sir. I want to go back to the school because I want to meet my friends and teacher in person.
Okay, that's great. We have Dr. A.V.S. Ravi from Haryana, Yamunanagar. He's a senior CIP EB member. I request him to say a few words.
Thank you, Dr. Ajay Gupta, sir, and thank you everyone for inviting me over. This is the thing which is always talked about. And like ma'am said, unfortunately, education has taken a backseat and liquor shops are the forefront. This apparently appears absurd. I should not say apparently, it is absurd that we are okay with opening up of, malls, shopping markets, gyms, liquor vents, holding elections. And what about education? These young kids, they've been at home for the past 2 years. And like ma'am said, it has definitely taken a toll. We get a lot of psychosomatic problems in children. They come up with vague complaints. And most of the time, as a pediatrician, I realize there's nothing wrong with the child. I mean, the moment you send the parents out, the child is very comfortable again. Like they've lost the space. They've lost their individuality. The only thing is, yes, they have learned how to, attend classes online with putting the video off and the mute and put it on mute and do what they want. But that is not what education is. You have to have absolutely, that is like this sweet little youngster Akshat said, we have to meet them in person. Staring at a TV screen, staring at your laptop or your iPad and trying to, connect with your friends. It's all honestly a sham. We have to get back. And as such, we've seen that in this present wave also, the number of cases are very high in children, but they're very, 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 very mild. In fact, if you ask me, there's been no hospitalization of importance at all. And that is why we should, yes, inculcate COVID appropriate behavior. And I think that's one thing that which these 2 years have taught us is discipline. Discipline, even staying at home, everyone knows, okay, you should not bump into each other all the time. Stay good 2-3 feet, 6 feet away, not 6 feet, at least 2-3 feet away. And it's a more sophisticated and more disciplined behavior. Yes, you have to wear a mask, you have to follow the rules and all that, which honestly, when the first lockdown happened, I thought it was an unsurmountable task. Asking everyone to go in for hand hygiene and masking and social distancing, this was apparently impossible. But we've been able to do it. So, but then we should start opening up schools gradually, keeping in mind that there can be an outbreak and you can have a lot of cases, but be very careful with stringent norms of social distancing, masking, and COVID appropriate behavior. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi. We have some parents also. Request them to say a few words. Rinki ji hai or Dev?
Yes, sir. Can I?
Sure.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. मेरा बेटा लक्ष्मण कुमार ताती है. Also, he is a special child. He has no sense in his lower part. He read in the Lukra Government School in class 7. When before lockdown, he was punctual and every work he had do at time. But that time, he is careless. A lot of gapping between them. But that time, he do not regular because he say me, Mama, I'm at home. I do after some time. But school give him punctuality, regularity, and discipline also. So according to me, school should be reopen quickly because he need friends. He is special, so he need friends. And at home, I can't provide it. And special educator do not do physiotherapy at home. He only give suggestion or a good way at phone or Zoom or Google. But physically, when he go to school, he do better everything. So according to me, school should be reopened fastly. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Rinki. We have now joined Dr. Smith Dalwai, who is Treasurer Central IIP and is one of the panelists. He's a developmental pediatrician of him, and we welcome him. So, Doctor, I hand over the mic now to Dr. Manpreet, who will be the coordinator along with Dr. Puneet Sharma, Secretary IIP Isdali branch, to take on the proceedings.
Thank you, Dr. Ajay. Welcome, Dr. Sameer. Is he there?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Sorry, I was a little late.
No, you are on time.
You are in time, sir.
To go ahead with the discussion, we have Dr. Manpreet Sethi, and she is senior pediatrician and with a lot of interest in adult health and metabolic syndrome particularly. And she will be moderating the today's session. So I request Dr. Manpreet Sethi to please carry on the proceedings and to re-emphasize the importance of school ecosystem as a whole for the overall development of our new generation. Over to Dr. Manpreet.
Thank you, Dr. Puneet. I'll start sharing the screen now. I'll just go through the screen. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Respected doctors, teachers, principal ma'am, academicians, parents, and children. I welcome you today to this discussion where we'll be discussing about the feasibility of opening schools now in Delhi. I don't know whether this is the right time to be discussing this, or we should have actually discussed this a little earlier, but all said and done, it's never late. It's better late than never. Fine. So let me just start with the facts that we already know. Delhi particularly, apart from most of India, we have seen, the highest number of school closure days anywhere in the world. For a while, there was some competition from countries like Uganda, and the statistics shown over here actually from November. But even Uganda opened its doors, the school doors for the children in January 2022, this year. All the eminent bodies of the world, the WHO, the UNICEF, the UNESCO, they have all been endorsing for a very long time to keep the schools open. Moreover, we know that COVID as a disease in children is not that dangerous. The severity of disease is much lesser than it is for adults. And there's a lot of data which we'll be talking about later. And of course, who doesn't know that schools are not just about learning and academics? Children do so much at school. School means so much more to them than just books and studies. They form their best friends there. They play sport. They learn to interact at a level of, certain level of society. So schools is not just about academics, and it's not just that we are depriving them of. And of late, and over the last 2 years, we've seen a lot of evidence emerging for real physical, mental, and emotional health problems that the kids are facing because of this prolonged school exposure. And if we compare private schools to government schools and the high socioeconomic status families to the lower ones, the damage to the low socioeconomic status families has been devastating. Not only have they lost out on studies and academics and education, but children who used to get a meal in the school, so many things. It was a safe environment for the parents to leave their children in school. That all is gone too soon. Next slide. We understand that the last 2 waves of COVID have been quite disastrous. There wouldn't be a family where somebody has not lost a loved one, somebody has not experienced the pangs of COVID, people running around for hospital beds, oxygen, everything is understandable. And that is why there is this primal need for the parents to protect their children, and which is very understandable and very reasonable. But with everything else opening up, why haven't the schools still opened up? Is it that we are really looking away from making this decision? Is it that we are wavering this decision, waving it off for the longest time? And is it that because of school closure, we are actually doing more harm to our children than the virus would do in any way? So this is a question which I'm going to be addressing. This whole issue we'll be addressing through this talk and this webinar. And we hope to reach a consensus, and we hope that we can exert some kind of pressure on the government, on the authorities, to probably look in the right direction. So you can open, like Dr. J.P. Kapoor and the Principal Koshi mentioned today, that you can open restaurants, bars, malls, cinema halls, but not schools. So is it more important to get your child a taco at a mall than to send him to a school? As Ma'am Koshi rightly said, has education become a real disposable commodity in our country, especially our city? All right. So India's reaction to this virus from the school perspective it is not based on any of the global practices, neither is it based on scientific data. And we will be talking about this and presenting this in 3 modules to follow. What is going to happen because of this prolonged school closure? Apart from, as I said, the fear of the virus is actually causing much, much more harm than the virus itself, and leading to such long school closures, which have left such huge learning gaps, which will be extremely difficult to fill. There'll be a disadvantage for our children for especially the ones in higher classes who are applying for colleges. And especially the ones who are applying abroad, they'll be competing with the rest of the world, which is far ahead from us. Then, of course, my friends, my distinguished guests, Dr. Sameer and Dr. Swati will, of course, agree with me that children, the very young children, have really faced problems like lack of social and communication skills. And there is so much higher incidence of children bordering on the autistic spectrum disorder also these days. Of course, the set of problems in government schools is completely different. So many children have actually dropped out of school, have gone into child labor. It's been devastating for them. So without further ado, I will be starting the discussion. I think Dr. Ajay has already introduced all of us very graciously, all the panelists. I'll just take a minute to introduce the parents and the children. We are joined today by Ms. Priyanka Dev, who is a mother to 2 children in class 6 and 10. Children are not really in Delhi schools, but NCR, because Delhi and NCR are equally affected. Ms. Rinki Tanti, who spoke with us, and she's the mother to a special child in class 8 in a government school in Dalupura. We have Arnav Gupta, he's a class 11 student from DPS Mathura Road. Neha Kumari, who's a class 10 student of a government school, and Akshat Singla, who's a class 5 student, a primary student from Sardar Patel Vidyalaya, Delhi. When I take this talk ahead, I'll be basically splitting the whole talk into 3 modules. The first one being, what is the reality of COVID-19 and children? What is the science and the facts behind it? How has school closure impacted the children? And we'll be taking the experts' view and opinion about different aspects. And finally, when we reopen the schools, what are the concerns to reopen? What are the prerequisites? And what are the special conditions, if any? So let me just go ahead with the first module. And the first question I will be addressing to Dr. Deepak Gautam. And it is that studies thus far have indicated that children are less prone to developing severe COVID than adults. Could you please elaborate on this, sir? And does this apply more to a certain age group of children than others? We would all like to hear your experience. Over to you, Dr. Deepak Gautam.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Manpreet, to giving me the privilege to start this discussion. And as far as I understand, after listening everybody, most of us, that in principle, we are agreeing to the opening of the school. But the question shows the studies indicate that children are a lot less prone to develop severe COVID infection than adults. Yes, it is a fact. This is a less severe disease, but less severe disease doesn't mean we can risk our children. Yes, definitely the severe disease means cytokinin storm, which is the responsible factor for most of the deaths in adults, is missing in children. Even less mortality in children and less morbidity can be a devastating experience if we think in terms of the future of the nation. Children are the future of the nation. Plus, the acute disease might be less severe, but post-COVID syndrome, most COVID complications like MIS-C are very common seen in the second wave in the children. So there is no doubt that the study shows that COVID infection is less severe in children, but yes, it is there. And to put children at risk is something we should be think again and again. Thank you.
Can I ask any of the other panelists if they have a little different point of view on this particular issue? Would anybody like to answer, any of the panelists?
Actually, COVID, most of the children, it has not been shown that the children are spreading the COVID more. Initially, it was thought that they are super spreaders. But if the rest of the family members are vaccinated, there will be very less chance of getting the infection home from the schools. Dr. Sameer has to say something.
I agree with Dr. Deepak as well as Dr. Ajay, but point is, see, science is ever evolving because it's based on data. 2 years back, we didn't know much about COVID, who's going to be a super spreader, how children are going to be affected. But the data from the limited few schools across the world, wherever it has opened, there is not a single evidence of any outbreak in schools with children or children taking it and spreading it in the community to grandparents or geriatric population. There is not a single evidence. And if there is, then it is in those communities in which people are against vaccination, where 50% of the people have not taken vaccination, like the United States. That is their own, if I may say so, decision or stupidity, whichever way we look at it. So there is no way to link any data where opening of schools has led to any outbreak of the disease. Secondly, as already said by Manpreet, Dr. Manpreet earlier, is that the children have a mild disease, and hence there is no need to worry that any seriousness is going to be the result. Thirdly, we must look at even lockdowns. The reason the lockdown is connected not to the number of increase in the cases. The lockdown, I repeat, is not connected to the increase in the number of cases in the community. Lockdown is connected to the requirement of oxygen beds and ICU beds in the city. If there is no overcrowding or extra demand more than the supply for oxygen related beds or ICU beds, there is no reason to lock down anything, which means cold, cough and fever by COVID is just another addition to the cold, cough and fever of other viruses. So we don't close down schools if there is a flu epidemic or there is a measles epidemic. This is how we have to look at it now. More children have died in India in the last 2 years of tuberculosis than of COVID. If number of children dying because of tuberculosis is an indication, schools should never have opened in India in the last 20 years. So I think the argument is very, very clear. Children will have COVID infection. A very small number of them will get morbidity and mortality. In no way, in no scientific way, is it connected to reopening of schools. That is what I would like to say. And that's the decision the government of Maharashtra Pediatric COVID Task Force has already communicated to the government.
Thank you, Dr. Khan.
Thank you. So I would also like to add a point, if you permit, madam.
Yes.
See, we could bracket the way the school opening procedure, like the criteria for opening the school and criteria for attending the school. Not all children need to be at home. Schools could be open, but that doesn't mean that every child has to attend. We could design scientific criteria. Who are the children that those are like fit to attend the school, like those whose parents are fully vaccinated, those who are themselves vaccinated if they are above the given age range, then those who are not having any comorbidities. Such type of scientific protocols need to be designed rather than a full closure, like or a full opening of the schools.
Thank you, Dr. Swati. Here, I would also just like to add a point to Dr. Deepak that it was seen that last year about 66,000 children in Mumbai, Maharashtra, actually got COVID even when the schools were closed. And whatever children we saw of MISC got MISC even though the schools were closed. So there is the community transmission which is there. It doesn't have anything. I mean, I feel it does not have too much to do with the schools, but we will take the experts' opinion. My next question is to Dr. JP Kapoor. What is the data with regard to severe COVID infection amongst children in India and globally, sir? Would you please like to elaborate on this?
Yeah, it's very clear with the discussion up to now we have already. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
The thing
Yes, sir, you are audible, sir. Dr. Manpreet, please stop sharing screen so that Dr.
Right.
JP
Okay.
Kapoor wants to share the screen.
I have stopped sharing.
The data is very clear over here. Over 70% of children with COVID are asymptomatic. That is the data which is available with all of together. And only 1 to 2% of all the children will be needing ICU treatment, as already been discussed by different panelists. And a study which you have asked me from global data, which clearly says that only about 2.5% children were hospitalized, 0.8% required ICU admissions, and less than 0.1% had mortality issues. And believe it, most of the people who have got hospitalized also in children, they had one comorbidity or another comorbidity. As Dr. Madam was saying about now, we should decide which school is to go. The child has a comorbidity. He may remain at home and study offline. If the child is not on comorbidity, he should be allowed to come to schools. So the important message which comes out of this study is the risk of children are very, very low. But costs which we are facing because of closure schools are extremely high. So most of them are asymptomatic. I will end it over there.
Would you stop sharing so that I could share? Yes.
I'll stop sharing.
Yes, yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Kapoor, for that insight. And that makes us, stronger. It increases our confidence even further that it is probably the right time and our children are not really so much at risk just because of the schools opening. I will go ahead with the next question, and this is to Dr. Swati Ghate, ma'am. Do you think that Omicron has behaved differently than the previous variants during in children during this wave? Ma'am? Dr. Swati, can you hear me?
Yes, sorry.
Ma'am, please unmute.
Yes. The Omicron is in this wave, children are presenting mainly with the same symptoms of upper respiratory tract infection, like the running nose, coughing, and fever, but the fever range is a little higher in children and adolescents as compared to the adults. So if the whole family is getting infected, it is the children and the adolescents who are like taken on priority to the doctor because they suffer more. Number of children definitely have increased. Then some gastrointestinal symptoms like loss of appetite or vomiting, nausea are also pretty common. Headache is more common, but overall the duration of the illness is much lesser, and it appears to be a simpler form of the COVID.
Right. So apart from just the sheer numbers, which are very high during this Omicron season, it's practically like a flu or any other mild illness that children usually suffer, because children being children are, of course, have a less strong an immune system and are prone to infections. Thank you, Dr. Swati. My next question is to Dr. Sameer Dalwai. Sir, social distancing is seen as a strong preventive, and it has been advocated for the last 2 years. So on the one hand, we are keeping our children from school so that they are socially distanced and are not in one classroom with a lot of children so that they don't catch the COVID virus. But at the same time, we are seeing them going out with their parents to restaurants, markets, malls, vacations. Isn't this some sort of double standards?
Yeah, thanks. I'd like to look at it in another way. Basically, what people who are against opening schools will argue is that children are not permanently or for a long time in the malls or in the markets. They're there only for a little while, whereas in school they have to be together for a long time. So I think the actual debate should be on the fact whether in schools they are safe or not, rather than comparing to the other issues. So that's my perspective. And that I think we have discussed reasonably well, that there is no connection now to prove any relation between COVID pandemic or epidemic, as it's being called in many countries now, just down-regulated it and connected to opening of schools. And I think I'll leave it at that. There is no connection between the two.
Thank you, sir. And I think most of us would agree with what you are saying. All right. Let me just go to the next. This is not moving.
Can I just add something here?
Sure, ma'am. Please
Yeah,
go ahead.
yeah. I feel, also that we want our children to learn the responsibility of taking safety precautions or practice safety precautions wherever they are going, even if they are stepping outside, because these problems will now remain here for a long period of time. As we all know, diseases stay for a long period of time. So just by not allowing them, I do understand we are a largely populated country and we do have more number of students, unlike Western countries or the Western world. In one classroom, we have about 45 students at one go. And if we call everybody, it is like calling a huge population together under one roof. But at the same time, don't we want our children to learn and take the responsibility of practicing health and hygiene precautions, of maintaining social distancing, whether they are at a mall, whether they are at school, whether they are in a classroom, how children will accommodate in future also. I mean, till how long we can just cage them at home is what I wanted to put across to the panelists.
That's a very valid point, Ms. Sasta, and it's very well taken. I will just go ahead with the talk now and with the next question, which is directed to Dr. JP Kapoor as well as the parents. So we have seen that like everything else, as I said, is open except schools. So parents and adults are free to travel, to any place, even their offices. Let us not even say that they are, going for a lot of entertainment, but offices, airports, but our children are not going to school. So wouldn't they bring the virus home? How will the kids stay insulated from the virus, at home when others are going out, and they'll specifically get the virus only when they go to school? Your thoughts, please, Dr. Kapoor.
This is definitely a big myth that we are sheltering our children by keeping them at home. Recently, a sero surveillance was done across the population, and it was found that even when the children were kept at home, 70% of them, 67% of them to be precise, were found to be positive, even when they kept at home. So this is real myth that we are keeping with us, that by sheltering them at home, by keeping them at home, we are saving them from COVID infections. And you are rightly saying this. Once adults are going out, they are definitely going to bring infections home. And even some adults are asymptomatic. All adults don't get symptomatic, don't get severe disease. Most of them, again, I will say in Omicron, even most of the adults are being asymptomatic and they're carrying their infections home to the children. So that's a definitely a myth. So that's a strong point. If we are getting infections from asymptomatic adults who are getting the infections from the malls, other things, and bringing to the children, why should we keep them locked up in the schools? Let the schools be open. And definitely, Madam Asa is rightly saying this. We really can't get away from COVID appropriate behavior. Let it be adults, let it be children. And at the same time, I will say the vaccination of adults is a key thing, which we will discuss in the coming modules.
Yes, sir. I would like to go over to the parents now. Ms. Priyanka, do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, even I feel that the children are definitely not locked inside the house. They are definitely not insulated. We see children all over the place. Parks, they are playing together. They are going to the mall for a movie with parents, vacationing in Goa and Dubai with parents. I mean, I don't say how the parents are keeping them safe. And besides that, if I don't speak about myself, about others, maybe Rinki ji will be able to add to that. You know, parents are going away and leaving the children unattended at home. So, and our maids are coming in, our helpers are coming in, our drivers are coming in, everyone is coming in. So how are they insulated? I don't agree with this.
Absolutely. Rinki ji, आप कुछ ऐड करना चाहेंगी? कुछ बताना चाहेंगी और?
जी मैम, थैंक यू मैम. मैम, मेरा तो यही कहना है कि हम बाहर जाते हैं, लोगों से मिलते हैं, वर्किंग है, वाइफ हस्बैंड दोनों, तो बच्चा सेफ कैसे है? हम बाहर के लोगों से कांटेक्ट करके घर में आते हैं तो बच्चा हमारे कांटेक्ट में आता है, तो यहाँ कोई इशू ही नहीं होता कि बच्चे को घर में हम सेफ रख रहे हैं. बच्चा हमसे ज्यादा सेफ हमारे स्कूल में है, क्योंकि हम वाइफ हस्बैंड दोनों बाहर हैं और बच्चा मेरा स्पेशल चाइल्ड है. और स्कूल में हम बिल्कुल फ्री होते हैं माइंड से कि हमारा बच्चा अकेला है. वहाँ टीचर्स होते हैं, स्पेशल एजुकेटर्स होते हैं, और कई बार तो ऐसा होता है जो चीजें हम घर में उसको नहीं दे सकते हैं वो स्कूल प्रोवाइड करता है. अब मेरा बच्चा, मेरे 3 बच्चे हैं, वो 3 ही आपस में रहते हैं, बट जो फ्रेंड सर्कल होता है वहां से बच्चा काफी कुछ सीखता है. वो हम भाई बहन में, सिबलिंग में नहीं सिखा सकते हैं उसको, और पेरेंट्स के बीच में नहीं सिखा सकते हैं. तो स्पेशल नीड चाइल्ड के लिए स्कूल बहुत ही कंफर्टेबल और डेवलपिंग एरिया है, क्योंकि वहां से बच्चा फिजियोथेरेपी सीख के आता है और वो घर में भी कोशिश करता है. हम कितना भी कोशिश कर ले तो उसको वो चीजें प्रोवाइड नहीं कर सकते जो स्कूल में स्पेशल एजुकेटर कर सकते हैं. और
थैंक यू मिस रिंकी.
Very important point made by Mrs. Rinki. Once we will have this discussion, let's not think about a small population. We have to think about 70% of the children who are living in slums, disabled children, malnourished children. Think of those, the children who are living in poor conditions. We really have to think about that when we make the decision. And let's decide that the notion that schools are not safe places, we should come out of the notion that schools are also as safe as our residents. If the children are getting infection at home, let's send them into schools also. So schools are as safe as our homes are. That's very important.
I would think schools are a safer option for many children. You know,
Also,
not privileged like our children. School is safer for
I will ask Dr. Sameer now. I think he's raised his hand. He wants to say something.
I agree with Dr. J.P. Kapoor as well as Mrs. Priyanka Dev. But Rinki जी, मुझे आपसे कुछ कहना है. इसमें दो राय नहीं कि स्कूल में बच्चों के लिए बहुत ही ज्यादा फायदे हैं, खासकर जो स्पेशल नीड्स बच्चे हैं उनको फिजियोथेरेपी वगैरह जैसे आपने बताया. मगर एक बात से मैं आपको आगाह करूंगा एज अ मदर कि आखिर बच्चे को जिंदगी भर स्कूल में नहीं जीना है, बच्चे को अपने घर में और समाज में जीना है. तो ऐसा भी ना हो कि हमारी जिम्मेदारियां हम स्कूल में आउटसोर्स करें. आपने पहले जब कमेंट बहुत अच्छा किया कि शेड्यूल के बारे में, मैं हमेशा मेरे जो स्पेशल नीड्स के बच्चे उनके पेरेंट्स को बताता हूँ, शेड्यूल पहले घर में होनी चाहिए, इंक्लूजन घर में होना चाहिए. बच्चा अगर घर में सब काम करेगा तो उसे इंक्लूडेड फील होगा, तो स्कूल में भी होगा। तो शेड्यूल सिर्फ स्कूल शुरू होने के बाद ना हो, और जहां पे स्कूल अब तक शुरू हुई नहीं है, मैं पेरेंट्स से दरख्वास्त करूंगा आज से अपना एक शेड्यूल बना लीजिए घर में, ताकि बच्चा शेड्यूल के आदी हो जाए। क्योंकि स्कूल जाने से कुछ बच्चे मना कर रहे हैं क्योंकि उन्हें घर पे ऐशो आराम की आदत हो गई है। तो पहले इस घर में शेड्यूल स्टार्ट करिए, डेफिनेटली स्कूल शुरू होने से फायदा भी होगा।
सर मैं थोड़ा सा एक पॉइंट और ऐड करना चाहूंगी, प्लीज गिव मी चांस।
बोलिए बोलिए रिंकी जी।
सर
जल्दी से।
मान लीजिए कुछ पेरेंट्स एजुकेटेड है, कर लेंगे, लेकिन जो पेरेंट्स एजुकेटेड नहीं है, जिनके पास एंड्रॉइड अवेलेबल नहीं है, वो कैसे करेंगे अपने बच्चों के लिए?
बिल्कुल ठीक है।
इस स्कूल में 14 बच्चे हैं मैम स्पेशल, जिसमें मैं और एक पेरेंट्स, 2 पेरेंट्स ही करा पाते हैं अपने बच्चों को रेगुलर, बट बाकी पेरेंट्स नहीं करा पाते हैं। उनके बच्चे बिल्कुल जीरो लेवल पे पहुंच चुके हैं, तो उनका क्या?
ठीक है, चलिए हम आगे चलते हैं क्योंकि बहुत सारे इश्यूज हमें और भी डिस्कस करनी है, लेकिन आपका पॉइंट हमने ले लिया है। थैंक यू। Dr. Sameer, I'll come to you now. So you must have seen, sir, that in this wave, Omicron wave, in the first wave and second wave, so many children have had mostly asymptomatic and some of them even symptomatic COVID. So aren't we actually a lot safer from the virus point of view than before? And isn't it the right time to open schools?
Yeah, yes, you are absolutely right. We are a lot safer. Also, in Omicron, a huge amount of the population has already got infected, which means many of them have now developed antibodies and are therefore have acquired natural immunity. So this is actually the best time to start schools, because most of the population, especially the adult as well as the pediatric population, is protected. At the same time, when we start schools, we must remember there may be a little spurt in the number of cases. That's bound to be. What we have to keep reminding the parents and the schools is focus on, is there anybody really getting a serious illness? If just somebody gets a cold and a cough and that turns out to be COVID, don't panic. That's bound to happen. That's what I'd like to say. Start schools.
Thank you,
Also,
sir.
there should be no asymptomatic testing.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, we will probably talk about it when we come to the protocols when school opens. Let me go ahead. Okay, now we have finished with the first module in which we talked about how COVID affects children. Now let us go to the next and the more important part of this discussion, which is how school closure has affected children. What impact has it had on the physical health, the mental health, and at various different levels. So let me start with you, Dr. Deepak and Dr. Swati. What do you think according to you, what are the commonly voiced fears amongst the parents who are consulting with you when it comes to COVID about their children?
The most commonly and the commonest and main fear is obviously the fear of getting the COVID. The fear of getting the COVID is the real worry of the parents. Actually, we are discussing the issues on 2-3 I may say parameters. One is science, one is social, one is practical, one is political. But when as a parent, anyone comes to us, his main fear is the fear of getting the COVID. And the another major fear is handling the COVID positive children. Because media has created so much fear among ourselves in the mind of children that they continuously seeing the न्यूज एंड दिस एंड दैट. कुछ पेरेंट्स तो यहाँ तक भी बोलते हैं कि जैसे एक ग्रैंड पेरेंट्स ने तो मुझे ये भी आके बोला कि बेटा मैं जब बाहर निकलने को लगता हूँ तो मेरा पोता सीढ़ियों में खड़ा हो जाता है, पापा नीचे मत जाओ, नीचे कोरोना आपको मार देगा. सो we have to think on the different lines. The main common fear is we have to allay their anxiety, of the parents' anxiety, and other obviously fear of getting weight. Children are getting obese, they are not doing any exercise, they have become lazy, they keep on like online classes are continuously there from the schools, but what children are actually doing, वो सिर्फ वीडियो ऑफ कर देते हैं और जाके सो जाते हैं. So these are the other concerns कि इनको कैसे करें, but as far as COVID is concerned, their main fear is like this one. Dr. Swati.
Dr. Swati?
Rightly said, sir. I agree with you. The main fear that the parents are facing is that children are not vaccinated. So unless they are vaccinated, they don't think that they are shielded from COVID. Secondly, all the time we are talking about cases and number of patients rising again now with the Omicron wave. And most of the parents, they are not aware that Delta and Omicron are so very different. So they are now getting acquainted with the, as the news is going about that Omicron is milder and we need not worry much about this wave. But when this wave started suddenly, that time they all were afraid of having the same sort of devastating effect as we have experienced in Delta. So it will take some time for the society to assimilate the new knowledge and then to accept it and then to move ahead with the changes in their mindset.
Thank you, Dr. Swati.
Even the fear of vaccination is also there.
Yeah, we will be addressing the vaccination in a different section, so which is a very, very important part of this discussion. I just have to add a few things over here that we have been living with COVID for the last 2 years, and we don't know for how long we'll be living with COVID in the future, hopefully with the more less virulent forms. But that doesn't mean, does it mean that we keep the schools closed out of this fear for longer than this time, which is already so disastrous? Second, you're very right that media has been a big fear monger. It's been really spreading a lot of fear without really knowing the facts and the science behind COVID infection in children. And parents, of course, will want to protect the children at any cost. So as pediatricians, as educationists, I think it becomes a duty of ours to actually sit them down, allay their fears and anxieties. And I even have the suggestion that when schools reopen or before they reopen, if every school can be given a fact sheet about what exactly is how COVID behaves in children, along with the science behind this and the facts as in how many children have actually suffered the severity of infection in children, the hospitalizations, mortality, etc. One pager to all the parents. We'll probably have more parents on our side who are willing to send the children back to school.
Dr. Manpreet, the fear is not about these are the, as I have said in the starting, we are talking on the different parameters.
I agree, sir.
Fears with regard to COVID, not with respect to reopening of the school. Every parent wants that.
Yes, but
they want assurance that.
Yeah, so if we can assure them in a way that, COVID is not very severe in children, the world statistics globally haven't shown much harm in children, probably we'll have more of their confidence with us and they'll be less fearful of the disease. Moving forward, my next question is to Dr. Sameer. Schools were closed in 2020 when everything else was closed. That was what we knew at that time to do, to close everything. Lockdown probably was required also. But as we forged ahead in the time in this period, slowly, everything started opening up. Offices, markets, malls, everything started opening up. But why did schools remain shut for so long, especially in our country, our city, as compared to the rest of the world? Dr. Sameer.
So that's a very good question, and we must understand that the reason behind it, well, in lockdown, there was a knee-jerk reaction, everything was shut down, that's fine. After that, there was a feeling that in crowded places, in closed crowded places, schools, the infection will spread very fast, and children could be vectors who would carry home or be super spreaders who would carry the infection to either the teachers or to the parents and grandparents at home. Now, when we talk about allaying anxiety, it has to be allayed with giving the right information, but in the right dose. Using very big jargon and words actually scares the layman. So we have to make it very clear that Spain, for example, one of the developed countries, has down-regulated the term pandemic to an endemic. मतलब उनका कहना है कि भैया हर साल जैसे सर्दी जुकाम का फ्लू जो कॉमन फ्लू कहते हैं हम, वैसे ये भी कॉमन फ्लू में ये भी शामिल हो गए. तो जैसे 10 वायरस हर साल कॉमन फ्लू करते हैं, वैसे इसमें 11वें शामिल हो गए कोविड. तो हमको ये इंफॉर्मेशन देनी है पेरेंट्स को कि कोविड जाएगा नहीं, पूरी तरह से गया नहीं, मगर है तो वो भी कॉमन कोल्ड जिसको हम कहते हैं वैसा ही इन्फेक्शन करेगा. जिस बंदे को सर्दी खांसी बुखार है, उसने घर पे बैठना है कुछ दिनों तक, अच्छा हो जाएगा, फिर स्कूल में आना है. लेकिन कोविड पॉजिटिव दिमाग में डाल के या कोविड पॉजिटिव बनेगा बच्चा, इसके लिए कोई सीरियसनेस हो, ये बात गलत है। ये हमें पेरेंट्स को और स्कूल्स को सिखानी है।
Thank you, Dr. Sami. That was very well worded and very easy to understand, probably even for the parents. Thank you so much. Let's move ahead.
Just want to add on one more thing. Just want to share actually my personal experience related to fear fear related with COVID. So after the second wave, I had a lot of students experiencing major anxiety and fear, not related to getting COVID, but related to losing a loved one due to COVID. Like Dr. Deepak also mentioned that the grandchild tells his grandfather that don't go outside, otherwise you will die. So the fear was of losing one's loved one. That was a major fear amongst children, especially because they were also, fear gets passed on very easily, and they were seeing all sorts of news in media. They were listening to their friends going through such tough times with COVID patients in the family, or even losing loved ones. So that fear was getting passed on. And now what we are facing, what we are experiencing amongst parents is that parents are not really scared of, dealing with or coping with COVID, but rather that if my child will get infected and fall sick, what will happen to his exams? How he will be able to face exams, because the whole examination system has changed. There are so many number of cycle of assessments that we are having at school, so many examinations we are having at school. Every week there is a unit test, and every quarterly we are having exams, because we want students to not lose their grip over studies. So the fear is, if my child will get infected and fall sick, how will he or she appear in the exam or prepare for the exam? That's the fear with parents nowadays.
Yes, Ms. Asta, thank you very much. This is a very different point of view, and from a very different angle, which probably only an academician and a counselor would be able to share with us. It's a very real issue also. So your point is very well taken. Let us move ahead. Now, the next question I will be asking Dr. J.P. Kapoor, sir. So this is actually more of a specific question for Delhi per se. It's a targeted question. So the whole world has borne the brunt of COVID-19, including countries which have health systems and school systems that are both better and worse than us. So is there any particular reason that why Delhi's had such long school closures than anywhere else in the world, sir?
The reasons are just the same, I will say, for the rest of the cities and countries. But definitely in the first wave, if you remember, we had a big surge of COVID cases. And as Dr. Sameer was saying, the schools were closed, not because of the cases, because of our health services getting overwhelmed. The number of cases are so much, the anxiety and the panic was so much. With some fever, people were rushing to the hospitals to get admitted. And you know, the overwhelming situation which we faced because of the bed shortage, because of the oxygen shortage, we were worried in this wave also. Though Delhi government has made all efforts, has expanded tremendously the bed capacity and oxygen capacity, but in the mind of the parents, that thing always remained. The mind of the schools, I will say, that will always remain, that hope that services won't get overwhelmed this wave also. So that's the one reason which I can think of, that schools have been closed for a longer time. The second thing I'll say is the parents' fear, which we were all talking of. They still think the schools are not the safe places. They still think the child won't be able to behave in a COVID appropriate behavior. They still think maybe all children needs to be vaccinated. I've met so many parents, they say, first vaccinate my child, then only I will be able to send my child to the schools. Third thing is, being the capital, the media is totally focusing on capital city of Delhi. You see, most of the headlines at this moment also, they're totally focused upon Delhi, and which again affects the psyche of the parents, the psyche of the other stakeholders. And that's the precise reason. It's not any other reason. The schools have been kept longer closed, but at this moment, Delhi government has definitely decided by next week, they will be opening the schools, definitely. As other cities have also done it. Today we got the news that TN has done it, Chandigarh has done it. From the 1st of February, they're opening up their schools for the senior classes. Though that's again a point of discussion. It's always the J type of curve. The children which is about 10 to 14 years of age, they suffer more than the children who are younger. Though I'm in favor that primary school should be opened first, then the secondary schools. But let's see what happens, how the things go about it. That's my answer to this question. Thank you.
Dr. Manpreet, even the administration have tried to open the school earlier also. And Miss Astha and Miss Koshi will highlight this point. Every school has sent a consent, ask a consent from the parents. And as far as I am informed, not more than 10% of the parents have agreed to send their children to the school.
So even when the schools are open, sir, in the classes, there were 1 or 2 students only coming.
Yes,
the attendance
that
was
is
so
what I am
meager
saying.
that's a fear. Ultimately, what comes to our medical professional is we have to remove this fear.
And then it started that the hybrid module. In schools, teachers are taking classes online. 1 or 2 students, and then they are taking the classes online. And there is a I forgot the name of that lady. She is rightly saying that internet facility, as Dr. Kapoor also pointed out, that there are children in slum and everywhere. So the fear is getting COVID is so much, and it is created by the media. And whatever amount of science, as Dr. Samir is saying repeatedly, we can share with the parents, but the impact of media is so vast and heavy on the minds of everybody that doctors are not in the capacity of allaying that anxiety to that extent. So we should take some steps to control the media also in whatever way. Dr. Samir is in.
Ms. Koshi also wants to say something.
Yes,
Please.
I wanted to say that, I think we should not actually beat around the bush. The reason that schools did not start was it was very convenient for everybody to think that the best way to look after our children is to shut them up. I mean, if I wanted to open my school, and I did open my school, by the way, at a time when parks were allowed in Delhi to open to children. And I told my parents, so what I'm trying to say is if I want to do something, then I will go about it in a logical manner. And what I did was I met my parents online and I told them, parks are open. Your children are going to parks. They're playing with other children in the park. Parks are not particularly not crowded. They are very crowded in the evenings and the mornings. The school is like a park now because nobody's come to school for years. And it's green and lush and flowers are growing. Consider that this is a park and send your children to school. And we made a whole schedule for children to come class 1 one day, class 2 one day, like that. And we send out a letter saying, I want to send my child to school because for emotional and welfare, health, mental health. And I had a very high percentage of parents bringing their children to the school and taking them back. They had to do all that work themselves because no buses were running. Because at the same time, you're trying to stay below the radar because somebody will find out and say, kya ho raha hai? So this is what we did. Now, what I'm trying to say is to say that, oh, there was fear. If people decided that schools were the best place, we just had to work on sending out that message. But for politicians and for a lot of parents and everyone, it was very, very easy to fall prey to the fear mongering that was going on all the time. And children were at the receiving end of that, I'm afraid. And that is the reason that schools remain shut. It's because we did not want them opened. We sort of bought into the fear element. Today, all of you are saying children, I mean, even today, you are saying senior classes will open. Why? Why should 10th and 12th open when you yourself are saying that the older people are more susceptible, the younger are not susceptible? Then why will you put 10th and 12th into schools? So you yourself contradict, you yourself, meaning the government contradicts itself. and things like that. We don't sort of work in a logical manner. And the lady Rinku has pointed out that, we keep on talking about our urban children. Oh, they go to, Dubai for a holiday. Hello. All our street children are on the road in a crowded area under the flyover. Who is bothered about them getting corona or anything? Nobody is bothered about them. We talk about the elite few who have got Android phones. I mean, why are we even talking about hybrid? The respected doctor said that, we can look if parents are comorbid, then we won't send the child, meaning the child will bear the brunt of the comorbidity. I mean, that's me taking an admission test and saying, you can't come to school because your father's got diabetes. Do I say that? I don't say that. I say every child has a right to an equal quality education. It is the responsibility of the citizens of this country to give an equal quality education, not online schooling, by the way, education to our children. And I'm not saying that happens only in school, but hybrid and the reasons for hybrid are not what education holds of value.
Thank you, Principal Koshi. Dr. Sameer wants to come in, I can see.
I completely agree with Ma'am Koshi. Maharashtra government last time had done the same thing. They opened only for the higher classes in December. Then with Omicron, they shut down. Today, we have taken a very clear stand from the pediatric task force, and they've opened up all standards from from the pre-primary to the higher grades. That's just like to share that. And also the pediatric task force from Maharashtra has come out with guidelines for teachers, schools, as well as parents and PTAs in association with the Ministry of Education in Maharashtra. I'll be very happy to share it with Dr. Manpreet and Dr. Ajay, and they can share it with all of you as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sameer. And thank you,
sir,
for these insights and for actually stating the hard facts. Thank you very much. And the next question is also directed to you, ma'am. Purely from an academic standpoint, how have children actually handled the online schooling? We hear that reduced syllabi, shorter exams, Google Forms, etc. Do you think there is an acceptance for all of this? Have the standards dropped? Is this reversible? Are these gaps going to be filled up in time or not? Ma'am.
Well, all this talk of reduced syllabus, shorter exams, Google Forms is only a whole set of people trying to make sense of online classes. Nobody can in their, right state of mind can think of this as any kind of education. I mean, what do you mean by reduced syllabi? Excuse me. We sort of added the books and books. On one side, we will say knowledge explosion. The other side, CBSE will say, by the way, that now the class 12 examination is going to test half a semester. Nobody questioned this. What do you mean? You mean to say that if I'm going to teach grammar, tomorrow I will test, letter writing without testing grammar. Is that possible? You can't reduce grammar out of a syllabus. Similarly, mathematics is accumulative, isn't it? You don't sort of put away multiplication and then come to algebra. So what I'm saying is we are all fooling ourselves all the time into thinking that we are doing something very great by these kind of contraptions of reduced syllabi and semester examination and online examination. Online examination, because fast. Everybody knows that everyone is looking at something else and we give marks. And now they'll say promote everybody. Again, I'm saying the issue is not promotion because no child is going to benefit by sitting one more year in the same class. He might as well move ahead. But from an academic standpoint, whatever that means, education is more than the academics of it. Today, in the kind of scenario that we are going through, we are more bothered about the values that our children, about the community building. All these are issues for us, not, syllabus. If a child can read and comprehend and has his mathematics in place, I don't have to teach him anything. He can study himself. And we have learning to learn as a focus. So we tell the child, go and read and come back and we can discuss things. And that discussion is what is missing, a face-to-face discussion. I mean, man is a social animal. You've removed society. We talk about social distancing. That is the problem. We have made it socially distant. We're not physically distanced. we are socially, we made the social demarcation. And talking of inclusion, as Rinku has just raised the issue of children with challenges and their needs. So, I mean, we have a right to education in place. What is happening about that is a question that we need to answer.
Thank you, ma'am. It's absolutely correct that not only academics, education, the whole development of the children has taken a major blow. And a child who has done a 6th and 7th online is going to, when he or she goes to class 8th and is expected to understand everything in class 8th from day 1, having had less syllabus or not really understood the concepts in class 6th and 7th, we're looking at a huge problem ahead in the future. My next question.
I think it requires a real change in our way of thinking. It is not that I have to finish everything that class 7 does in class 7 and everything in class 8. I can catch up. Children catch up. I mean, how do they do, what is it, brain gym and all kinds of stuff? They don't sort of go about it, in a very linear manner.
That's true. And probably schools will have to prepare themselves for this situation when school gates finally open for the children. My next question is to you, Miss Asta Mahajan and Principal Koshi, that class by class, are the children really absorbing the lessons and chapters? Are the concepts really becoming clear to them with this online mode? I think, ma'am, you already answered this explicitly, but if Miss Mahajan would want to add something, please.
Well, I would like to start this by saying at least they have absorbed something. Right. At least they have absorbed something. I really don't know how much they have absorbed in the past through online learning or how much they are absorbing right now through online learning. At the same time, I think we as teachers have been totally absorbed, by bringing in new advancements, changing the pattern by using learning to use technology, blended learning, flipped classrooms, what all not we have done to help students get engaged and accommodated to this online mode of learning. Yet, when we talk about preparing them for the next level of instructions, I think now we are moving towards more towards under NEP also, though that is again a huge topic to be discussed in length. But I think now that while we are moving towards NEP, we are moving towards more of what we call experiential learning rather conceptual learning. So academic goals have also been modified. And with each class, like what Principal Ma'am Koshi also just said, it's more to do with whether the child is achieving those learning goals, those learning outcomes in a given class, not really how many concepts that child have grasped, how many concepts that child has learned. But as per the curriculum designed now, if the child has achieved those learning goals, I think they are good to go and move further up in the ladder, whether offline and online. And let me tell you one more very ironical thing here. How teachers generally, as my experience as a counselor, I can share this maybe not to offend any teacher though, how teachers really prepare students online for the next level. What they say to them is, अभी तो ऑनलाइन है, सब पास हो जाओगे, जब ऑफलाइन एग्जाम्स होंगे तब क्या करोगे, कैसे करोगे? And they scare them. But I think as teachers, we also need to understand the idea is not to scare them, but to tell them that this will also change. What you have now will also change. So be prepared. Don't take your studies so lightly. Yeah, and we can do it in a better way. That it's not like whether offline or online question how we are assessing. Yeah, you is to know how much you have understood and not just to give you marks. So I think that realization has to be brought among students.
Very well said, Asta, very well said. Ma'am, would you like to add anything? Dr.
Yeah, I do want to say, I think it's significant that we said at least they're absorbing something. This is typically what we all, something is happening, whatever is happening is okay. I mean,
take what you
Would
need.
you as doctors be happy about something happening in your hospitals? You know, I'm so glad that, you know, the whatever the nurse picked off 2 of the instruments rather than all the, at least she picked some of the surgical instruments out, you know, kind of thing. If that's what's going to make you happy, I'm afraid that's not what makes teachers happy. And at least that's not what should make us happy. What is it that they are absorbing? Are we doing something meaningful? I think if anything, what Corona and the schooling online that happened. And I think it's very, very important that we understand that it was called online schooling and not online education, because that was not an education. That online schooling made us all think about the nonsense that we are doing in schools.
Absolutely right.
You know, like when you say that we did flip class and breakout rooms, I mean, we all became, you know, what you call entertainers for our children, trying to keep them onto that thing. And it was all the urban elite who was so happy keeping their children in air-conditioned rooms with this computer, while he had another, you know, gadget here and another gadget there. And we were thinking he is safe, while his mind was going down the drain, his body was going down the drain, his emotional well-being was going down the drain, and we were thinking we have done something with them.
मैम जो आप कह रहे हैं ये बिल्कुल एब्सोल्युटली राइट है, लेकिन इसी इशू के साथ साथ हम ये भी डिस्कस कर रहे हैं कि कोविड एप्रोप्रिएट बिहेवियर भी स्कूल में मेंटेन होना चाहिए। ये सारी चीजें तो उसको मेंटेन करने में भी खत्म हो जाएंगी। चिल्ड्रन विल बी इन द स्कूल but not in the same aspect. They will not enjoy the company. They have to make the physical distance. They have to wear the mask. Then how these things will, again, they will enjoy.
पर अभी तो आपने बोला था डॉक्टर दीपक कि you know, हमें तो बहुत कुछ सोचना पड़ेगा कि जो जिसपे हमने इतना जोर लगाया था उतना इम्पोर्टेंट नहीं है। तो you know,
मैंने बोला लेकिन
come back to school, अगर आप सोच रहे हो कि बच्चे स्कूल आएंगे and then after that break होगा और सब लोग खाना खाएंगे और खाना खाने के टाइम सब लोग मास्क पहन के बैठेंगे और एक दूसरे से खाना नहीं शेयर करेंगे और एक दूसरे के पास बैठ के गपशप नहीं करेंगे, ये कैसे होने वाला है? जरा हमें समझा देना।
मैं तो यही कह रहा हूँ कि होने वाला, मैं तो इतनी देर से यही
नहीं होने वाला और नहीं को उम्मीद भी ना करना इसकी, मैं कह रही हूँ।
बिल्कुल
बच्चे रहने दो।
तो ये जो बार-बार हम एक स्टेटमेंट यूज कर रहे हैं कि कोविड एप्रोप्रिएट बिहेवियर को लेके स्कूल खोल दो, वो तो पॉसिबल ही नहीं है।
हाँ बिल्कुल बिल्कुल।
Can I just Dr. Manpreet, before you move ahead, just add on to what Koshi ma'am just said. I totally agree. You know, we did become more of entertainers for a while, but we were also, as the teachers, educators, we were also trying our best to, you know, get on to make something happen. At least when the government has shut, you know, we were also helpless as educators. Whatever we could do with what we had, we started doing, and we started experimenting with that. You know, how to engage our children in online classrooms, what activities to bring in, how to give them hands-on learning experience with things. Yet I would say there are a lot of countries, if this is not very common in India, who are also very good with distance learning education system. And let me really share this from a scientist, from a great scientist who's also a pioneer in distance learning from Sweden, who puts it across this way that, you know, the personal communication between the educator and the learner needs to be understood. If the educator is able to bring in empathy in one way or a two-way communication, if that empathy is there, learners are more motivated to be more engaged and involved in their own studies. So I think that is very important, whether we are teaching offline or online, whether children are learning offline or online, we must respect and apply empathy, you know, what teachers are going through, what students are going through at their end, and then look forward to making this a very, very learning
Ms. Sata,
experience.
we understand, and nobody is actually trying to undermine the efforts of the teachers and the school staff, which they have done, for this online education. I think we are very grateful to you. You've done a very significant, marvelous job. But what Ms. Koshi probably was trying to say is that online education will never make up for what actual education is within school. So I guess that's the point of conflict which was there. And Dr. Samir wants to come in now. Dr. Samir.
Let me congratulate IIP Delhi and East Delhi and all of you guys for actually bringing up a very valid discussion, which shockingly has not been happening even in the national media. And like you're saying, it's more about fear mongering. The real discussion, and again, I respect both Koshi ma'am's word by word what she has said, as well as Astaji, that there was a situation where we had to do something. I mean, there were things where we were not willing to go near the building of somebody who had a COVID in that building. Today things have changed because 2 साल पहले जो डर था, जो खौफ था, वो आज knowledge से निकल गया. How have we beard? We have, buried and cremated people all over the at wrong place. Whatever, lots of rubbish happened. Today we are wiser, but when we are wiser, we need to know what went wrong as well without blaming anybody. I think what Koshi madam is saying, and which I also have been saying for a long time, the debate should happen on how do we take stock of where the children are. Where the children are when the school reopens tomorrow. And that is where the individualization is going to come in very important. The real training of teachers right now needs to be done. How will you evaluate where every child is in terms of his or her learning? And how will you then look at in the next 1 year to bring the children back on track, not in the next 1 week. In fact, in the next 2 weeks, don't have any academics. Have Antakshari, music, singing, let the kids express to each other what troubles they have gone through, the emotional loss that they've had. But after that, the real challenge in educational circles should be, how are we going to assess where each child is? And it cannot be a factory method, exactly what Koshi ma'am was saying. Earlier, what was happening, I think COVID has woken us up to what nonsense was happening in the name of education before COVID. And it's time to wake up and understand that this factory industrialization of education is the worst thing for children. We need to evaluate how each child who comes into the classroom today, where she or he is. We cannot catch up into inverted commas in the next 3 months. We will need 1 year to really work on how to get each child to catch up at least 1 year later. So 1 year later, at least we have some system of being at par. The second question about Dr. Deepak Gautamji, I understand. We may not be able to really manage ultimate COVID appropriate behavior in schools. But does that mean we don't start schools? Or does that mean we start schools saying no COVID appropriate behavior? The opportune thing to do is start schools and talk about COVID appropriate behavior. Let me assure you, children are more disciplined when it comes to wearing masks than I am. They will do what is the best, and let's start with that.
Thank you, Dr. Samir. That was really, really useful and driving a lot of points home and making things very clear. Let me go over now to Dr. Swati Ghate and ask her the next question. Ma'am, we are talking about schooling as a singular now, but as in the previous discussion, we've seen that school means different things to different age groups. So could you please enlighten us with how online schooling in your practice, how do you see it, having impacted primary children and children in the middle and senior classes? Dr. Swati.
Do you mean the effect of online learning on children?
The online mode of schooling, the online mode closure of schools and changing to online mode.
So closure of schools has driven them off many opportunities of learning. Like schools, as we all know, are also centers for gaining so many non-academic skills, including the social skills, the creativity skills, the life skills in general. So many things children are learning. So all those opportunities they have lost, and they have been confined to their houses, and they have been, like, for example, a small child who is into the primary classes, he learns basic rules of punctuality, coming to the school in proper uniform, attending to the teacher's commands. So all these small things are the set of skills that he learns at that particular age. A little older child, maybe at the secondary level, he needs to learn self-learning at that time. So he learns how to apply whatever he has learned and use it in an appropriately given situation. So if he knows tables, he has to know that if such a problem is there, a mathematical problem is given, what exactly he has to do, even if he knows all the multiplications and additions. So this is also translated into life. So he knows how to use information in a given situation. So such things are learned only in the schools and through proper social systems. So when it comes to older adolescents, they have to make their identity. So an identity formation needs going away from parents and being with the touch with the world and develop their own value systems, develop their own ideas, take their career paths and decide what they have to be in life. So all these opportunities were affected to a great extent when schools were closed. Coming on to impact of online learning, if you want me to tell about that, there had been so many physical as well as emotional as well as cognitive, so many impacts. So obesity and the dry eye syndrome and the back pain, neck pain and all those things.
We will be asking questions about that in the subsequent sections. I'll go over to Dr. Dalwai once again. Dr. Dalwai, what have you seen in terms of difference in social skills in the small children as well as the adolescents who actually started school or entered adolescence in the online era as compared to kids who had crossed this stage before the pandemic hit us? Have you noticed any differences in their emotional status, in their mental state? Dr. Dalwai.
Again, brilliant question, Dr. Manpreet. We understand that children go to school at the age of 2.5 because that is the age developmentally, behaviorally by which they get rid of stranger anxiety and they are able to stay away from the mother with a stranger. Now, children who are 6 years old today have actually never gone to school. Earlier, we used to imagine that when school starts in the junior most classes, whether it's nursery or junior KG, the children used to cry for a month before they settle down. I wouldn't be surprised now if class 2 students or class 1 students are crying for a month, because for them, this is their first exposure outside the house. Moreover, for 5 years now, they've had, and especially the last 2 years, they've had their parents at home all the time, Dada, Dadi, Nana, Nani at home, and spoon feeding in a literal sense totally. So for them, this is going to be a new kind of anxiety where for the first time, they're going to find something very abnormal that is getting out of their mother's lap. So expect a great deal of anxiety. A class 2 student may not cry like a junior KG student, but there will be other ways in which she will manifest anxiety. There could be thumb sucking, there could be bed wetting, of course there could be crying, there could be disruptive behavior, there could be violent behavior, and we need to be able to pick these up as merely signs of the child having separation anxiety. Adolescents gradually move into a relationships and a phase of friendships, as Dr. Manpreet, you rightly mentioned, in school. And this is nowhere as much as in the adolescence area. So I think if all of us look back, our best friends today are those which we made in our adolescent phase. This will be missing. So children will either try to be over friendly to others, and because of the gender issues, there might be a little bit of gaps there, or they might be very distant and somebody will have to do the ice breaking part in schools. So schools will have to look at bridging these gaps. And just finally, to go back to the question my dear friend Dr. Swati mentioned about challenges faced earlier in online school. Look, there are two sides to the coin. Some children have been better off in online school. Those children who are very shy, who are being bullied, who had some special needs, who needed more direct one-to-one interaction. In fact, their parents are saying my child is better off at home because he is now away from the bullying that used to happen in the school bus or in the class, or the degradation that used to happen when the teacher used to say, now read this, and he can't read it. So even these children, when they go back, they'll be going back with a different perspective. All of this has to be taken in mind. Thank you.
May I just add, Manpreet?
Yes, Principal Koshi.
I think while we have said how has online schooling impacted children, we haven't really taken into consideration the fact that parents largely have very little idea about what their children are doing online when they are supposed to be in class. Okay, they have actually opened out this whole world of strangers to children. Okay, I mean, we're going to see, sort of reap that harvest in the years to come. Because in our experience, when children start to make friends online, after a certain amount of time, it is let us meet outside, and then let us meet outside. And most of the people they're making friends with are not their age group, because these are people who are preying on the net. And I mean, that's a source of concern that parents have to really, really keep in mind about what has been the impact of the so-called internet age or era of schooling on children.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right, Principal Koshi. In fact, as a mother of an adolescent, I've also seen that they've actually, the very outgoing, vibrant children have actually now, they've sort of quietened down. Their friend circle has shrunk to that little small Zoom group, which is very tiny, which is, I feel, very unhealthy for children of this growing age. We'll take the discussion forward. And my next question, just a minute. Yeah, so this is directed to Dr. Sameer Dalwai once again and Ms. Asta Mahajan. So, of course, we know that schools are shut, but along with schools, lots of sports complexes are shut, lots of community activities are shut for children. There are so many of these children who are aspiring athletes, swimmers, basketball players, who've actually lost out of more than 2 years of training time. And I personally have a friend whose child is suffering because of this. He's a national level squash player. And though this will, be true at a global level also, but I imagine that the effect is too much on the Indian children. And what is the effect of this on their self-esteem, and what can be done about this?
So again, what a touching question, I would say, and it's very sad because typically India में क्या होता है, बच्चों को बोला जाता है आप 8th 9th तक जो स्पोर्ट करना है, जो म्यूजिक प्ले करना है वो कर लो, 9th के बाद पढ़ाई करनी है. What happened to the guys who missed out their 6th, 7th, 8th in the COVID pandemic and now directly find themselves in the 9th or 10th? They will never get an opportunity to do this even amateurishly. So the only issue, that only way I can look at it is that children are highly resilient. We need to think of how we will still give them an opportunity to have sports in addition to academics and manage the curriculum, as Madam said. So I completely agree with her that curriculum hoax has to be called out for what it is. And children, we need to finally look at a wholesome atmosphere of education and growth and development for the children. And I think this is the way we can. But the time that has been lost is crucial. And I don't know whether we can ever bring it back, except the fact that give them that opportunity now and hope their resilience takes it over.
Exactly. So better late than never. It's time that we give all these things to our children. Principal Koshi, would you want to comment on this, or Ms. Mahajan, if you are there?
No, I think Dr. Sameer has said what is necessary.
Right.
Absolutely right.
Even the Commonwealth Games Village Sports Complex has been turned into a COVID facility.
For 2 years. For 2 years.
Yes.
I mean, I think Dr. Ajay, that's a really telling statement. When the forces go into areas, what do they take to make their barracks? The schools are taken to make their barracks. The Commonwealth villages sports complexes are made into beds where nobody is used now. You've seen the empty, all the beds lying with nobody using them. But children will not be allowed to go to play. Their play areas are converted to parking lots and things. And I just wanted to say, Dr. Manpreet, that when a child is quiet, that's an indicator that you better have your, antenna up, that why is he quieter than before, or even why is he, extremely disturbed. Younger children who are not so communicative, haven't learned the social skills, have a lot of tantrums because they're not able to communicate their anxiety and stress. So both too much of quietness and too much of tantrums are both things for us.
Extremes of the same, yes, emotional distress. I understand. Right. Dr. Gautam, this is the next question is for you. This pandemic, we've seen a lot of physical as well as mental, emotional problems that the children are facing. But apart from the COVID pandemic, this time has actually really changed into a gaming sort of a mini pandemic. So what is your experience with your patients and how badly does it affect the eyes? Can you please give us your views?
Yes, the gaming has become the gaming disorder has actually become a mini pandemic, and Ms. Kosi has very explicitly explained the effects of children's being online at a time. All the time they are online, and even I was very much surprised that small kids are talking about things like virtual money, NFT, etc., which honestly even I am not aware of. So there are. This is a very valid point of online. The online classes, as Ms. Kaushi has already explained, yes, they are giving them at least curriculum or the scheduled study, but parents cannot check every time what they are going through, what with whom they are chatting, what they are doing, whom they are messaging. It has become a kind of disaster also. And as far as eyes are concerned, dry eyes are common because children are always online. They don't even blink. Blepharitis are common disorders. We all know that is a problem.
Yes, the incidence of myopia has gone through the roof.
Dr. Manpreet, also
Yes.
it's connected to the previous question because children are now so used to sitting and playing games with their thumbs that they are not going to run onto the football field so easily. We'll have to really find innovative ways to switch.
Yes, and who knows it better than me? Being a pediatric endocrinologist, I'm seeing cases of childhood obesity and its complications all over the place. So let me go ahead now. Dr. Swati, what has your experience been with screen addiction? How widespread do you think? Actually, these are all repetitive kind of issues that we are dealing with because they are all overlapping and interlinked. But if you have anything specific or anything different to say about it, would you please contribute? Dr. Swati.
Yes, regarding the how widespread it is, there is one study which was conducted from Jaipur Medical College, and they have postulated that they have found out that 65% of children were falling into the criteria of screen addiction. Now, screen addiction is a very typical term, and it needs a definition and it needs a diagnosis. But problematic screen use is something which is a better thing to address, and in that category, I think most of the children would fall, because pre-pandemic we were allowed them a certain number of hours, and now during the pandemic their screen use has been escalated to 8, 10, 12 n number of hours. Like, there is no limit. So and as Madam Koshi was also saying, that they are facing the cyberbullying, including the cyber sexual bullying, and many online activities they are doing which are not very good for them, including the porn and everything. So this screen has been, as we all know, is a double-edged sword, and they have been cut from the both ends. So we have to address these issues, teach them cyber safety, cyber security, and proper use of media. These are to be done continuously, and more so now that the pandemic is already 2 years into have gone through the pandemic. So regarding the emerging mental health and anxiety disorder, it is rightfully said that there is a parallel pandemic going on of the mental disorders, and anxiety tops the list, and also depression follows closely, with many studies quoting to 30 to 40% of children reported to have anxiety. So that big is the incidence, and it is really very threatening that we are growing adolescents and adults who would be anxious, and how they would take the country ahead, we really don't know. And this all is because of the stress, and because our children are not, they don't know how to handle the stress, and so they go to the screen, and the screen gives them more stress. So there is a vicious cycle. So I request the teachers to be
The
really.
principal, ma'am, yeah, he wants to come in. Principal Koshi, please.
Yes, I wanted to say, you know, when you say that children are stressed and they don't know how to handle stress, you know, we are forgetting a key component in this whole thing, and those are the parents. I mean, what have been parents' role if children are obese today? Did they make the khana? Did they make the right khana? Why did they not make it? If children are not able to tackle stress, what was the parents' role? I mean, after all, Dr. Samir was talking to Rinku, saying that, you know, parents have to take on the responsibility of their child. But the point is that the urban elite give what you call technology, use technology instead of using relationships to build the child, you know. And I would say that the poor children are being brought up by the village, you know, by the community. They're running out, they're things. So this areas of stress that the urban child faces is not faced so much by the rural, maybe by the rural poor, yes, but not by the rural, you know, the thing. So there are fine demarcations. But what we have to think about in this whole thing is, what was the role of the parent? And how did they fail their children because the children were at home? Now somebody is saying that, you know, we can't look after our children all the time, that they are on the computer. Hello, they're your children. You've got 2 of them at home. You can't look after them, but the teacher who's got 40 will look after them very well. That is fine. As a parent, if I'm going to ask you to do work, wo nahi ho sakta, because, you know, I don't know how to do it. Teacher ho, main fees de raha hu aur aap padha nahi rahe ho, mere bacche ko kuch nahi pata hai. I mean, no, parents have stepped back from that. They think that they are money-making machines. They don't think that they're a parent. They have to, I mean, Corona should tell them that they have to acknowledge the role of a parent, to read, to discuss, to spend time, to have khana on the table, to say, do chapati hai to kha lo apna khana, nahi to nahi uth sakte. Kaun bolega ye sab? Teacher bolegi, teacher khilayegi, teacher samjhayegi.
Dr. Samir, you want to say something? And then I will also like to say something.
To Madam Koshi, either a virtual namaste or a virtual hug, whatever she's willing to accept from my side. But, you know, what she mentioned about parents, and the other part is, as we have the schools in Bombay, which are international, so and so, Falana Dikna school, global Falana Dikna school. I think the most global school that parents need today for their child is their neighborhood. Today, there is a term which I have coined, from cradle to classroom. बच्चों को डायरेक्टली क्रेडल से क्लासरूम में डाल दो and outsource it. See, it's not about the expectations from the school. वो ठीक है, you are paying a great amount of fee, you may have some valid or unvalid expectations, but the child naturally grows in the household, in the relatives and the families, you know, extended families' houses, and in the neighborhood. Today, that has completely gone out of the wind. And today, after the pandemic, in fact, be prepared for an onslaught from parents. Because now parents feel that they've been involved with their child 2 years. Say, teachers ne kya kara hai? Humne ghar mein kara hai. Be involved, expect them that they'll walk right into the principal's office every day. And the issue here is, today, the child may also get up and say, I don't like the teacher right now. How can I mute her? So all this is going to happen, and we have to be ready. And the final thing is, parents, please understand the role of your own household. Chachas, mamas, mausi, khala, fupi, they are very, very important in our culture. And the neighborhood, that is where the child really learns how to deal with the classroom full of children who come from different backgrounds, all of whom are equally vulnerable and scared to come there with each other. You have to involve the neighborhood and the extended family.
I would like to make a point. So why we are discussing only about the elite? So there are so many parents who are devastated themselves. There's a large section of people who are like, they have gone through very bad time during the pandemic. So why we are forgetting them?
Correct.
Precise point I was making, madam. We are really talking about a very small population. Most of the parents themselves are so anxious in this COVID times. How do they manage their children? How do they manage themselves? I will say 80% of them had anxiety more than their children. And anxiety is infectious. It travels from parents to child. Children didn't know much about COVID. The anxiety of the COVID was given to them by their parents themselves because they were so anxious. And just not the anxiety of COVID, anxiety of financial losses which they are suffering, anxiety of getting that money to get that food. I've seen traveling to my hospital, the parents and children lying on the roads and begging. For children, they're begging for their families to fill their tummies on that day. So that was the state of affairs in those COVID days. But at the same time, now, anxiety of academics, which is really bothering, anxiety of the emotional part, which teachers really have to come forward when they come back to schools. Definitely parents have a role to play, but it's a collaborative effort. Teachers as well as parents both have to come together to bring back children to the normal state, which is a very important part of it. Give them the time, listen to them, give them the time to even not do a job. The study should not be time limited. If you not perform today, I will give you extra time to perform that task. We really have to go with them so that we understand them. Thank you.
I would also like to make a point over here, and this is answering Principal Koshi, that as you said, parents form the first point of contact and they are the first areas to discipline the children. But there are so many of us working parents, and not only us from the lower socioeconomic status, they are mostly daily wagers who are leaving their children with
who lost their jobs, ma'am. Who lost their jobs. The percentage who lost their jobs.
Or they have to go out of the house to do a job and leaving the child with a smartphone or something. And children like ours probably who had no exposure to a device before the pandemic. So the idea over here and the point of discussion over here is that the devices now finally need to go. If the devices will go, the internet addiction will also go, because then parents will have a better control over the children. If the device is not there, they are more at peace knowing that if there is nothing, what will they look at it? So the whole addiction problem will automatically, I feel, come down. Ma'am, do you want to say something at this point?
I'm sorry, I'm actually raising this issue about parents because, when we look at how do we improve situations? Okay, so as a school, we work with parents, we work with children, we work with teachers, because this is our society. And unless I work with all of them. Now, when you talk about, as soon as the smartphones go, things will improve. But the point is that parents are unable to take the smartphones away from their children. Again and again, they'll come and say, ma'am, aap please bol do na, meri baat nahi sunta. Okay, so the point is कि ये कैसे हो गया कि आप ही का बच्चा आपका बात नहीं सुनता? ये कब हुआ था? हाँ, let me tell you, 2 साल कोरोना में नहीं हुआ, उससे पहले भी हो रहा था ये. Okay, so all I'm saying is, we should not lose sight of the fact that our parents also need to acknowledge that there is something that I have to change. If anything has to change, then unless we see what has to change, we cannot move forward. You see, if we think that I'll change this and things will happen. That's all I'm trying to point out by saying
that is very well taken, ma'am. And those are the basic rules of good parenting, which hold true whether online school or not, or in different aspects of life also. But here because we are discussing about online education and school opening, if the schools physically open, the devices will finally close, and hopefully the problems of these internet related problems and screen related problems will come down. I will.
Akshat wants to say something. Akshat.
Yes, Akshat.
I just wanted to say that ये भी एक point है, school closure and impact on children. इसमें जिन बच्चों के मम्मी पापा working होते हैं और siblings नहीं होते, वो single child होते हैं, तो वो सिर्फ क्लास ऑनलाइन क्लास कर कुछ नहीं करते, डिवाइसेस ही करते हैं, फिर अपना कोई फ्री टाइम में ड्राइंग या वो सब करते हैं। तो स्कूल जब हम जाते हैं तो हम वहाँ पर जो सब सीखते हैं, पहले स्कूल में हम टाइम लगाते हैं और फिर वहाँ पर होमवर्क, तो वो काफी अच्छा होता है।
Thank you, Akshat. This is straight from the biggest stakeholder's mouth, what he's experiencing and why he really wants to go back to school. Yes, ma'am. Did you want to say something, Principal Koshi, at this moment?
Miss Asta wants to say.
Yes, Asta.
Clapping for him.
Oh, that's a Sardar Patel clap. Yes, Miss Asta. You wanted to say something? I think her. Okay, I'll just go ahead then. So now this, I'm going to be speaking a little bit from my own experience. Being a pediatric endocrinologist, I have seen a huge number of patients. I think it doesn't even have to do with pediatric endocrinology. Every pediatrician must have seen that the number of cases of obesity have doubled, tripled, quadrupled during this time. And obesity brings with it its own complications like insulin resistance, pre-diabetes. Children have been holed up inside. There is a lot of severe vitamin D deficiency, which is also very symptomatic, even in adolescence, where it was not known to happen, earlier in the past. So much so that cases of precocious puberty also during this pandemic in the last 2 years have almost tripled. An 8-year-old, 8.5-year-old girl is coming with me with menarche. I will not say that there is a completely direct correlation between COVID or with this early puberty, but somewhere the lockdown has led to less physical activity, more stress, all of which disrupts all our hormonal axes. So how, what started actually as a viral pandemic has now become it's become a pandemic of lifestyle based disorders. How long can our children actually afford to be at home? We've already discussed about the emotional and the mental angles and the screen addiction, etc. So has COVID prevention actually become a bigger threat for our children than COVID itself? Dr. J.P. Kapoor, I would love your views for this.
Dr. Sethi, you are rightly pointed out. Excellent thing you have pointed out. We have talked about emotional issues, which are main issues. We talked about social health issues. Let's come down to the physical health issue, which you are talking about. And you are rightly saying obesity. But at the same time, you are an endocrinologist, you're seeing obesity and precocious puberty happening. I'm seeing patients who are going into malnourishment also.
Yes.
The children have been missing their midday meals, madam.
Yes.
They have not been going to the schools for 2 years now. And that midday meal was so important for them, which about 70% of my children have missed out in this time. Though definitely government helped them by providing free ration. But how much are they going to eat? How much they're going to get for themselves is difficult to really say. So at the same time, one field is malnourishment, other side is obesity. And not only that, the child labor, the child marriages, the sexual abuse, coercive abuse, many things have other things which have cropped up. And definitely you're rightly saying this. On the sake of prevention of COVID, how many more issues children are facing? Just not emotional issues. The physical health issues are far more important. Vitamin D deficiencies you have pointed out. Lethargy, they're not ready to get up from their have to take